So explosive allegations of political interference, criminal syndicates and sabotage of key investigations have rocked South Africa's policing structures. The KwaZulu-Natal Police Commissioner, Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi, has publicly accused the Police Minister Senzo Mchunu of shutting down a high-performing task team investigating political killings and ties to criminal syndicates. For more on this, we are now joined by News 24's investigative journalist, Jeff Wicks. Jeff, a very good morning to you. Thank you so much for making time for us this morning. Before we get into understanding exactly who the so-called Vusimuzi cat is, let's start off with what was it about yesterday's press briefing that jumped at you?
Well, I think yesterday's press briefing, Aldrin, was truly seismic, and what it represents is incredibly impactful. What we saw was a provincial police commissioner essentially break rank and name names and drop the receipts, as we say, calling into question the probity of not only the police minister, Senzo Mchunu, but also other high-ranking individuals in the South African policing landscape. And this is incredibly significant because, it shows the extent to which the uppermost ranks of the police are factionalized, and the war for control and power is now playing out in full view. We've been writing about this for several months, and we're going to see some significant shifts in the policing landscape, especially in the leadership structure. And this is probably the first stanza of that, but it certainly puts us on the world stage, and not for something we want to be there for.
Yeah, certainly, because what it also does is exposes some of the loopholes that we have, including in crime intelligence, which Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi was actually lamenting yesterday.
The issues around crime intelligence have been in the news for several months now. We've seen there's 2 waves of really serious arrests of high-ranking officers in that division. And now what we see is a further destabilization of the police force, because this moves into the general ranks. And this stretches all the way to the union buildings, obviously, because the police minister himself's probity has been called into question by Mkhwanazi.
Yeah. Then let's speak about Vousmuzi Matala, whose name was also mentioned yesterday during that press briefing, and Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi linking him to the so-called Vusimuzi conversations that have been taking place between himself as well as Vousmuzi Matala, including the allegation that he is funding the political careers of the Minister of Police, Senzo Mchunu. Who is Vousmuzi Matala?
So Vusimuzi Matala is an enigmatic fellow. We first came across him 2 years ago when we were investigating Babita Deokaran's Tembisa hospital files. And, she was actually the first person to put him on the radar through 3 shell companies that he was making money through Tembisa hospital from. And in our investigation, we placed him in a larger syndicate, part of a bigger grouping that is, partly responsible for extracting 2.3 billion rand from that hospital. And that's what Babita Deokaran first reported. And we kept our eye on him, and towards the end of last year, we revealed that he had won a tender from the SAPS, 360 million rand tender for the provision of health services, all while he's under investigation for procurement fraud by the SIU and the Hawks. So the very same organization investigating him then gifted him a nearly 400 million rand tender. And we worked hard on that, and we revealed all the issues around the irregularities of that tender, and it's eventually been cancelled. But, this is the issue that's at the heart of the entire scandal that Mkhwanazi lifted the lid on yesterday. The intimation is that Vousmuzi Matala has so much political reach and influence within the South African police service that he was not only able to score this tender, but then try and pay his way to the disbandment of another unit that was investigating him that threatened that revenue stream. It's an extremely significant development.
Yeah, and what should we read into that? That the conversation that would have taken place with Vusimuzi as well as Vousmuzi Matala, that this particular unit that has been investigating him will now be disbanded, and that communication coming through on the 31st of December, and indeed on the 1st of January, there is a letter to that effect.
The timing is incredibly suspicious. And when you consider that Mkhwanazi also shared records of a payment that Matlala made to Mkhwanazi through Medicare 24 Tshwane district, which is the same company that won the tender, it kind of makes the quid pro quo jump out. that the cash is in exchange for the disbanding of this political killings task team, which, to be fair, has done incredible work. I'm not a torchbearer for that team, and I won't vouch for everything that they do, but certainly in respect of the work that was done on the Vereniging case, which is the murder of Armand Swart, which Mkhwanazi mentioned, and the investigation of Vusimuzi Matala have been brilliant, and we've seen fast action from the police, which is something that sorely lacks most of the time. But now we understand that this is all part of a larger political game that stretches right to the top.
Yeah, what we heard yesterday from Shadrack Sibiya, who is the head of detectives, the National Deputy Police Commissioner, yesterday saying to my colleague Thabo that he denies the allegations that have been made against him, but also then goes as far as accusing the political task team of being a rogue unit and making reference to a case relating to corruption as well as murder in Fort Hare, where he goes on to say that this particular unit has been receiving funding or money from one of the accused in that matter. What should we then read into that? Because it almost seems as though on one end you have the head of the detectives that are saying that actually this unit is a rogue unit. On the other end, you have Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi saying that actually this unit has been doing some sterling work.
Yeah, I think General Sibiya is caught between a rock and a hard place. So you'll notice that he didn't put up any receipts or any substance to his claims. And, the difficulty for Sibiya is that he has an uncomfortable proximity to Matlala himself. When Matlala was raided in relation to another kidnapping, yet another scandal that has come in close proximity to him, he deposed an affidavit in a court matter that followed that and said that, I've met with Shadrack Sibiya before. He's helped me and he's assisted me when I got my medical contract to get access to the colleges. And, that the head of the detectives would take a meeting with such a man is problematic. And it also speaks to the sort of the maelstrom of problems that he now experiences because he's now been placed in close proximity with Kat Matlala once more. This is the head of detectives in our country. Yeah,
and even with that as well, again, he denies it and says that what happened was that he was the acting police commissioner at the time. Matlala needed assistance and he was merely trying to assist and communicated to Matlala that the Fani Masamula, who is the head of the police, the National Police Commissioner, had actually said no to that request around public works, who had instructed what to do with that building, that it will be SAPS that has the final say around that. But I don't understand, so you have an acting police commissioner, so does the acting police commissioner get involved in issues relating to contracts?
Well, not particularly. I think fundamentally they are in the accounting officer in an acting capacity, but we must be cautious of getting too into the weeds here. I think what Mkhwanazi did strategically well was to push all of this into the public domain. That protects him in a sense, but what we need is a complete due diligence and a review of exactly what is going on in the management suite at SAPS. Because if yesterday's press conference is anything to go by, we are in a significant amount of trouble.
Yeah. Vousmuzi Matala currently is, we understand, is facing a case relating to attempted murder, and this is in relation to his former partner, who is also an actress, Tebogo Tobejane. Just make us understand the point that Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi was making, that after Kat's arrest and the downloading of information on his phone has actually exposed this syndicate that is working with the minister, including money that has been going to the minister. Not too sure, though, if the minister had responded to any of the messages that he has been receiving from Tobejane.
So, as we understand it, that Mkhwanazi was something of a proxy, it seems, between Matlala and Mchunu. From what I could see, there was no direct communication between Mchunu himself and Matlala. But when Matlala was arrested in relation to the Tebogo Tobejane matter, that's when they got access to his phone. And that's when this entire scheme, or at least as narrated by Mkhwanazi, was able to be pushed into public view. And again, this is the case that is central to this entire matter. This is the matter that the political killings task team, or elements of it, was investigating along with Gauteng police. And this is one of the cases that they ran into issues with and specific issues around internal combating from other police officers. And so now that this case is before court, all of these things are in the public domain. It's going to be very interesting to see how this all plays out. Vusimuzi Matala is in court on Friday, again, facing 3 charges of attempted murder, money laundering, and defeating the ends of justice counts in relation to the botched assassination of Thobejane. She was in a convoy in October 2023 that was shot at, and she survived, but a person in the car with her was gravely wounded.
Yeah. Then finally, Jeff, it is the minister was asked in Parliament of this individual. The minister said that he doesn't know this individual. Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi then says that there was a phone call that he had put through to the chief of staff of the police, and this was during the Lusikisiki investigation of those multiple murders that had taken place in the Eastern Cape. And he, the chief of staff, then said that actually the individual that you're asking about is an associate of the minister. This would have been in September 2024. But in March 2025, when the minister is asked about this individual, he has no recollection of whom this individual is.
I think that you've distilled the matter right down to the bare bones. It's going to come down to what Mchunu says about his relationship with Mkhwanazi, if such a relationship exists, because he's on record in Parliament, a place where he cannot lie, and says that he does not know Mkhwanazi. Now there's supposedly this relationship with Mkhwanazi exercising political sway at the behest of people who will pay him. That's extremely problematic for the police minister, and it's something that was conspicuously absent from a statement he released yesterday, was any sort of further information about this relationship or non-relationship with Mkhwanazi.
All right. Thank you so much for your time. Jeff Wicks is an investigative reporter with the News 24.